The story of W.D. Fote is told by his children, Francis, Gloria, William, Richard, and Olga, compiled by W.D. Fote Jr., edited by Catherine Olga Fote Myers and Grace Myers Martin, narrated by Calabria Foti. W.D.'s childhood in Italy. Domenico Foti was born July 11, 1889, in Delianova, Reggio Calabria, Italy, to Francesco Antonio Foti, whose dates are 1863 to 1929, and Domenica Maria Battista, whose dates are 1867 to 1905. The eldest in his family, Domenico had two brothers and one sister. Raffaele, September 29th, 1891, Giuseppe, May 15th, 1896, and Caterina, September 10th, 1900. Domenico was baptized at St. Nicola Parish in Delianova, Italy. Little Dom, as he was called, demonstrated great intelligence and love for learning from an early age, and sometimes cried when school vacations started. He attended a Catholic primary school, which he disliked immensely because so many hours were spent memorizing prayers and performing manual labor for the priest, including hauling water. At 7 years old, little Dom wanted to learn more, so he told his father that he would like to attend public school. After his father refused, little Dom began breaking the water jugs that the priest made him and his classmates carry. The priest then beat him and sent him home, where Dom was beaten again by his father. After 3 days of this rebellion, his father Francesco understood his son's determination and allowed him to attend the public school. Little Dom spent the subsequent 2 years studying at public school. He did so well that the local magistrate asked Dom's teacher to allow his son to sit next to Dom, particularly during tests. Dom's first trip to the United States with his father. During this time, it was common for Southern Italians to travel to the United States to spend the spring and summer to do manual labor, often called pick and shovel work, and then return to Italy in the fall. This opportunity to earn money was one of the only ways for poorer Italians to protect themselves and their families against the corruption of the padrone and southern Italy's unfavorable economic conditions. From the spring of 1901 to the fall of 1902, Dom went to the United States with his father to earn money. He was about 11 at this time. He and his father lived in a shanty without heat during the cold winter months. Dom helped his father as a water boy until a truant officer found him and then placed him in public school. There he learned English in just 1 year. He was always grateful for the American laws that protected him and quenched his thirst for learning. When Dom and his father returned to Italy, his parents purchased a sewing machine and intended for him to launch a tailor shop for the region. However, Dom was disenchanted with this pursuit and wanted to do something else with his life. Without a doubt, W.D.'s time in the United States solidified his belief that it was the land of opportunity, a place where he could learn and provide for himself and his family in a way that was just not possible in Italy. Dom's mother understood his desire to emigrate to the United States and told him that she supported his dream. His mother, Domenica Maria, pleaded with Francesco to allow Dom to return to the United States. She even set aside some money for his trip. In early 1903, Dom's mother passed away at an early age. She was still possibly nursing Caterina, her youngest daughter. Devastated by his mother's death and determined to return to the United States, Dom begged his father to let him go. Even though his father had no immediate plans to go to the United States, he eventually felt obliged to listen to his stubborn son and to let him go. W.D.'s immigration to the United States in 1904. No relatives were traveling to the United States in the spring of 1904, and Dom was a minor. So Francesco found an adult in Delianova who would act as a guardian throughout the journey to America. W.D. traveled steerage class and described the conditions on board as living like cattle. He had $24 on his person. Upon docking in New York City, W.D. got separated from his guardian and was locked in a cage on Ellis Island with other immigrants. When a guard spoke to him, he was able to respond in proper English. Impressed with his English, the guard unlocked the door and allowed him to go free. Dom wandered into New York City alone, without his guardian or any friends or family. He was 15 years old. Survival from 1904 to 1912. It is unclear why, but soon after immigrating, Dom moved to Bradford, Pennsylvania to work in a glass plant for $3 a week and live in a nearby boarding house. The job in the glass plant may have been arranged by his sponsor, who was interested in W.D. returning the $50 immigration fee. Reportedly, he did so as soon as he was able. The fee was sent back to Italy to be used by the next immigrant. In Bradford, W.D. was exposed to brutal reality of being an immigrant. The competition for jobs between the Irish and Italian Americans was fierce, often violent and racist. It was typical for the Irish workers at the plant to ridicule Dom and the other Italians, frequently starting fights and brawls. One day at the glass plant, a situation turned violent when Dom was holding hot molten glass for the glassblower, and an Irish coworker spat in his face. Dom swung the tongs in anger, wrapping the molten glass around the bully's neck. Dom ran away, hearing the man scream. The police were waiting for Dom at the boarding house, so he hid in the woods and escaped by jumping on a freight train with other Italian workers going to West Virginia to mine coal. Working in the hills of West Virginia, Dom considered himself a cowboy. He had a horse, a cowboy hat, and a pistol. He rode with the job superintendents as an interpreter, as well as a water boy and watch repairman. It is thought that W.D. was working in the Clarksburg, West Virginia area because many Calabria's descendants settled and still live there. During the colder months, the miners warmed up the blasting dynamite by setting it near the campfire. Warming it from the cold made it less likely to fail. One day, the dynamite overheated and exploded when Dom was nearby. He woke up with his clothes torn and was now permanently deaf in his left ear. He recalled seeing parts of a man's body hanging from a tree and a naked torso on the ground. Soon after this accident in 1906, Dom moved to New York City and became one of the many Italian-American homeless in the area. One night, while sleeping in a doorway covered with newspapers, a man noticed him. The stranger spoke to him in Italian and asked him what he was doing. He responded in Italian, and the man picked him up and brought him into his apartment, carrying him like a baby. Upon reflection, Dom believed that if he had not responded in Italian, this man would not have saved his life. The man offered W.D. a bed and 10 cents per day, 5 cents for beer and lunch, and 5 cents for the movies, with the condition that he would explain the film in Italian to him and teach him English. Most likely this man was running a brothel. After some time, Dom became a bricklaying apprentice in Brooklyn. This was undoubtedly the opportunity he had been waiting for. He worked hard and never looked back. In 1912, when Dom was 23 years old, his father, Francesco, came to the United States with Uncle Raffaele to work in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Although his father asked him to go back to Italy, Dom refused. He was naturalized in Little Valley, New York on September 15, 1913. At this time, he changed his name to William Dominec Fote. He told his children that the surname Foti was always being mispronounced. but many of us suspected that Pa wanted to anglicize his name and lose the stigma of the Italian immigrant. There's an article published in the Olean Times-Herald dated September 17, 1913, with the headline, "Aliens Admitted to Citizenship. 22 received naturalization papers in Little Valley." And his name is published here as William Dominec Fote from Olean. Beginning of life in Olean, 1913 to 1918. In 1913, an Italian family living in Olean, a small town in western New York, 300 miles from Brooklyn, asked for W.D.'s help. The family was trying to sue the Pennsylvania Railroad because of a fatal accident at the crossing. At age 24, W.D.'s proficiency in the English language made him an ideal advocate for the Italian immigrants, most of whom could not speak or write in English. W.D. lived with the Barbero family on 4th Street. For the rest of his life, he claimed that Mrs. Barbero made the best meatballs he ever ate and that he was never able to replicate them. During the lengthy lawsuit, W.D. put his bricklaying skills to use, building brick manholes for Michael Fury, a contractor. W.D. excelled at the job and impressed Mike Fury so much that he brought W.D. on as a partner in his company. The company became known as Fury and Fote. It was common at this time to have city bands, which were usually started by a maestro trained in music, who would teach the different instruments in the band. W.D. became interested in music and played the clarinet in the newly formed Italian-American band in Olean. Others in the band were the Cecchi brothers, Harry Mazza, and Joe Appa. His contracting success was cut short when W.D. enlisted in the Army during World War I. He served from August to December of 1918 and was stationed at Fort Dix in New Jersey. He told us that patriotism was intense during World War I and every man wanted to serve. He was never trained as a soldier. Instead, he used his musical skills and played the clarinet in the Fort Dix Army Band. At the time of his discharge, the U.S. Marine Band offered him a permanent post in Washington, D.C., but he turned it down. When asked how long he was in the Army, Pa said, "Just long enough to get all the benefits." Road building contractor, 1919 to 1932. Soon after Pa returned to Olean after leaving the Army, he left Mike Fury and created his own business, the W.D. Fote Company, partnering with Fred Fornes. He quickly developed a reputation for fast, efficient work. By 1923, Pa was one of the most successful road builders in New York and Pennsylvania. That year, Pa purchased a Pierce Arrow Roadster for $6,200, equivalent to that of 15 Fords. A letter from the First National Bank in Olean, dated 1923, stated, quote, "W.D. Fote is a successful contractor in the road building business for 5 years, has excellent credit, and is prompt in meeting his obligations," end quote. Most of these roads were the first pavement in the area, replacing dirt roads. The roads were concrete, which required having a borrow pit and crushing plant to produce the aggregate, or having the aggregate hauled in. The cement was delivered in reusable burlap bags. Pa drove around the countryside looking for areas close to the job that looked good for a borrow pit. He would then make a deal with the landowner to excavate and set up a crushing plant. On one project, the concreting went so quickly that he received an award from the state for laying the most pavement. The paving jobs were in northeastern Pennsylvania, around Carbondale and Scranton. Because those areas were infested with diamondback rattlers, Pa wore high leather boots and carried a stick. Other jobs included 10 miles of concrete roadway from Emporium to St. Mary's in Pennsylvania, as well as the old Route 16 north of Ishaway, New York. There's an article here in the Olean Times-Herald dated March 15, 1921, The headline is Work on Road in Allegheny to Start April 1st. Fornes and Fote have contract which calls for improvement of about 1 mile. The article says, work on the improvement of the much-talked-of road to Allegheny will start about April 1st. It was learned today from Mr. Fote of Fornes and Fote, the firm which has the contract for the work. The plans call for the laying of the reinforced concrete 15 to 20 feet wide on both sides of the road to extend for a distance of about 1 mile. Allegheny citizens are jubilant to learn that the road will be improved practically immediately. Proposed plans for the improvement of the main road to Buffalo call for work on a point at the north end of Lima Lake toward Chaffee, a distance of 11 miles. And then there's another article from the Olean Times-Herald dated June 16th of the same year, 1921. The headline is, Through Road to Buffalo will be open in a month. The state road between Scotts Corners and Ishaway, now under construction, will be completed in a month, Fred Fornes of the firm Fornes and Fote stated today. Completion of this stretch, 5 miles in length, will give a first-class highway from Olean to Buffalo, Mr. Fornes said. Repair of Allegheny's Main Street is rapidly nearing completion under the contract awarded to Fornes and Fote. One side of the road has been completed and the remaining side will be finished within 6 weeks, it was said. The local firm has the contract for the construction of the road 6 miles in length from Jerry to Sinclairville in Chautauqua County. There's a picture here of Pa with his Pierce Arrow Roadster dated 1923. He looks very cute and successful with a 3-piece suit, a watch fob, and a cute hat standing next to the car. Moving on. During his early years in business, Pa used horse-drawn wagons and steam shovels. Later he got gas-engine trucks which consisted of an open cab and frame only. Pa added a box behind the cab for hauling materials. During the peak of his road building, Pa traveled from job to job over dirt roads in a Model T Ford. A Model T cost $400. So Pa had an arrangement with the Ford dealer to trade in his car for a new one every 3 months for $100. Pa said the turned-in cars were ruined due to the high mileage over the dirt roads. Pa told us about farmers digging and flooding a ditch across the road so cars would get stuck. Then the farmer would charge to pull the car out with his horses. Pa was so upset with one farmer. He backed up his vehicle, accelerated to top speed, and jumped the ditch. He said the car was damaged, but he didn't care because it was due to be traded in soon. His men were paid in cash, so Pa would drive from job to job on payday with a case full of money. To protect himself, he was issued a lifetime permit to carry a concealed weapon. He only mentioned one instance when he got a little nervous. He had picked up a hitchhiker before realizing he had all the cash in the car. In 1925, Pa had a credit line of $25,000 with the First National Bank of Olean, which was 10% of the capital assets in the bank. Pa was highly respected by the bank officials and city leaders. He invested aggressively, including investing in the Bolivar Oil Company with William Dusenberry, the president of First National Bank of Olean. And for the first time in his life, Pa was able to spend money on traveling and have fun. One example of this was a trip to Chicago during Prohibition for a road builders convention. Pa stayed in one of the best downtown hotels and in the evenings went to a speakeasy nightclub with some women. Pa said every time they got up to dance, the waiter would take away the bucket of ice and then they would have to buy another one. After a night of drinking at the nightclub, Pa was feeling somewhat cocky, so when the final bill came and Pa thought it was outrageous, he asked to speak with the manager. After some back and forth, the manager finally lowered the bill. He later learned that the Italian mafia ran the nightclub. Pa thought the floor show was so good that he returned the next night to watch the show again, but this time alone. The W.D. Fote Company hired many Italian Americans, including Pa's brother-in-law, Dominec Capito, Zia Caterina's husband, who had immigrated from Italy with their 3 sons in 1927. Zia and Zio Capito lived in Carbondale for the duration of the road job before moving to Olean. Around this time, Pa helped create the Christopher Columbus Lodge in Olean, which had evolved from an organization called the Italian Sons of Italy. He donated his services as the builder, and in 1932 completed the impressive two-story building with cut stone facing. Pa was the lodge's first president and a lifetime member. The membership included most of the Italian people in the Olean area, and Pa had the boys become members at certain times when there was a critical election. The lodge was a source of many happy memories for the Fote family and many more Italian-American families in Olean. The decent food, cheap drinks, dancing, games, and gambling kept the lodge busy. It seemed like the same people always attended the weekly Saturday wedding receptions. They were always the union of two familiar families. The only unfamiliar faces were a few out-of-town guests. Monthly clam bakes started at 9 in the morning and went until 1 the next morning when the music stopped and the bar closed. Trip to Italy, 1923 to 1924. During the height of his success, Pa traveled to Europe with Denny Bardenett. Pa paid for all the expenses of a first-class trip to Paris and several parts of Italy. While in Paris, Pa purchased two expensive Selmer clarinets, a matched set of an A and B flat. When they returned to the United States, the custom agent thought Pa intended to resell the clarinets, so Pa took one out of the case and had to play it. Pa traveled from Venice to Milan to Florence to Rome. In Rome, Pa and a group of distinguished guests had a private audience with the Pope, which required formal dress. At the time, Pa's old classmates from Delianova served as officers under Mussolini in Rome. They snuck Pa into Mussolini's private office during a state funeral for the King of Italy's mother. They took photographs of the funeral procession from Mussolini's favorite balcony. From Rome, they went to Naples and finally to Reggio Calabria. When Pa arrived in Delianova, he built a 3-story reinforced concrete building in the center of town, an olive oil mill on the edge of the city, and purchased a large orchard of olive trees in the area called Macellari. He then built a beautiful home for his family in the old neighborhood. Pa's father, Francesco, had finally realized his dream, sitting in front of a brand new house in a clean shirt, sipping wine. Francesco Antonio Fote died of cirrhosis of the liver 5 years later in 1929 at the age of 66. Pa told his two brothers that they could use all the properties and keep the profits from the olive oil business. Pa said that his family had made a lot of money during World War II, but they had never helped him during the tough times that came afterwards. Pa eventually sold the property to cousin Francesco Antonio in the late 1950s, but that he had only received a few nominal payments from him. On March 18, 1924, Pa returned to the United States on the ship Bergenia from Southampton, England. When son Bill visited Delianova in 1957, the relatives still talked of Pa's visit in 1923 and how he threw money in the streets for the kids. On this page, there's a photograph of the house that Pa built for his family in Delianova. A very large, it looks like a hotel. It's a very large building, 2 or 3 stories tall. Marriage to Mama, 1927. There were only 2 Italian families in Belfast, New York, including the Coccari family. Olga Marie Rose was the eldest child, born on September 10, 1907, Sant'Andrea Apostolo dello Ionio, a town in the province of Catanzaro in the Calabria region of Italy. Mama was the oldest of 7 children, including Ellen, whose dates were 1914 to 2007, Josephine, 1915 to 2010, Louis, 1917 to 1990, Adolphe Ponch, born 1920 to 1967, and Peter Paul, whose dates are 1921 to 1944, and Andrew, 1924 to 2014. Olga's parents were Bruno, 1878 to 1948, and Maria Rovido, 1885 to 1973. Grandpa Bruno's parents' surname were Coccari and Bressi. Grandma Maria's parents were Giuseppe Rovido and Caterina Calabretta. Mama came to the United States in 1913 with her mother, celebrating her 6th birthday on the ship Venezia out of Naples. We were told that Grandma Maria was seasick and hated the entire trip, while Mama ran all over the boat, having a great time. Pa was introduced to the Coccari family by Humbert Red Bardenett, who knew Bruno Coccari. Pa and Red often traveled to Belfast to spend time with Bruno. Many friends called Pa Bill, or W.D. His Italian friends and relatives called him Dominec, except for the Coccari family, who always called him Fote. Not much is known about Pa and Mama's courtship. Pa and Ma married at St. Patrick's Catholic Church in Belfast, New York, on January 25, 1927. Pa was 37 and Mama was 19. The Belfast Patriot newspaper reported, quote, "Lucy Bardenett was the matron of honor and Red Bardenett was the best man. Mary Franklin and Betty Curcio were the flower girls, and Paul Coccari carried the ring. Professor Martinelli of Allegheny played the organ. Following the ceremony, there was a 5-course breakfast, and in the evening, the reception was held at the Knights of Columbus Hall in Olean." Unquote. The wedding was large and boisterous. Pa told us it was the biggest wedding in the history of Belfast. Pa and Mama enjoyed a long and exciting honeymoon, traveling to New York City, Washington, D.C., Florida, and Havana, Cuba. While in Havana, they took their first and only airplane ride. Pa said that the wings were shaking and flapping. When they returned to Olean, Pa bought a new Cadillac for the start of their life together. He never drove it. It ended up sitting in the front yard of 631 North Union Street, and we children used it as a playhouse in the early 1930s. Early in their marriage, Pa would like to carry around Uncle Andy, who was only 2 years old. When someone asked who the little boy was, Pa would say, "He's my brother-in-law." Children and family life. Pa and Mama first lived in a large house at 704 West Henley Street in Olean. They had 5 children. Francis Anthony, born November 19, 1927. Gloria Ann, March 25, 1929. William Dominec Jr., September 1, 1930. Richard Joseph, August 13, 1932. And Olga Marie, August 13, 1938. Mama was remembered as being a vivacious woman full of joy in life, as well as for creating a happy home. She was also, for her time, a more modern woman. She played bridge, always playing to win, and enlisted outside help for household chores and childcare. Gloria remembers times when Mama seemed frustrated with us children, and she would march us all up to St. John's Church to sit quietly in a pew until we were settled down. Pa and Mama had a loving relationship. He brought her breakfast in bed on her birthdays and other special occasions. Pa's sister Caterina and Mama became good friends. Mama often encouraged Caterina to take a break from her home and childbearing duties to spend a few hours playing bridge together. After the stock market crash of 1929, Pa continued to enjoy considerable success as a road-building contractor. He never lost money on a job. In 1930, the family, including Aunt Josephine, moved to 729 North Union Street. Pa also owned other property in Olean, including some acreage and a house on Front Street, along with some coal leases in northeastern Pennsylvania. In 1932, our house at 729 North Union Street was destroyed by a house fire. Immediately after the fire, we stayed with Grandma and Grandpa in Belfast until Grandma had had enough of us. Then we stayed with Cia and Cio Capito until moving to 631 North Union Street, where we would live until 1938. Loss of business, 1932. Pa was not afraid of risk. In the 1920s, he was playing the stock market on a 10% margin. Like everyone in those days, Pa didn't think he could lose. However, the financial reality of the Great Depression was difficult for any business to bear. Pa overextended his investments, and eventually his business was no longer solvent. Pa said that the last straw was when he sent a bid for a road job which included a certified check for the bid guarantee. Immediately after he mailed the bid, the stockbroker called Pa to tell him he was short funds. Pa needed some cash quickly. Through his friendship with the Olean Postmaster General, Pa was able to get the bid returned and use the check to cover his losses in the stock market. Unfortunately, Pa would have been the low bidder and awarded that job, which would have kept him solvent. He was too proud to declare bankruptcy, so he sold all his equipment to pay off his creditors. In 1932, he officially broke up the partnership with Fred Fornes. For the next 14 years, Pa performed small concrete and bricklaying jobs to earn money. He built fireplaces, put in concrete floors in basements and cellars. He laid concrete for driveways and sidewalks. None of us knew a better bricklayer than Pa. To create concrete floors in a basement, the dirt had to be shoveled out and the concrete chuted in, both through a small cellar window. This was tedious and exacting work. No power tools were used at that time. There were many evenings when one of us held up a naked light bulb so Pa could finish troweling the slab late into the night. The better jobs were concrete driveways and sidewalks. Pa would align the forms with his good eye, which was better than any instrument. 1938. Mama dies. In early 1938, Pa had to sell the house at 631 North Union Street to pay the back taxes on the house. The burned house at 729 North Union Street was on a double lot which included a 3-car garage in the rear. With the help of Cio Capito, Pa converted the garage into a house by adding a kitchen and a bathroom, along with partitioning off the existing space to create a dining room, a living room, and 2 bedrooms. This is where we were living when Mama was pregnant with Olga. While Mama was in the hospital, Pa repainted the inside. He wanted it to be nice for her homecoming. In July 1938, Pa wrote a letter to his 2 brothers in Delianova. He talked about his wife and 4 children, with another one due in a month. All were in good health, as were Katerina and her family. On August 13, 1938, Mama died due to a massive hemorrhage during childbirth at the newly opened St. Francis Hospital in Olean. Pa recalled asking many neighbors to get tested to see if they had the right blood type and could donate to help her. People were superstitious and therefore hesitant to give blood. Only one of his friends, Benny Blue, donated. Pa begged the hospital to use his blood even though it was the wrong type. Most likely, however, their blood donations would not have saved her in time. During the wake, Pa kneeled at the casket with us children and promised to keep us together as a family. He had less than $10 to his name, and it would have been socially acceptable for him to send us to an orphanage and start a new career elsewhere. He even received an offer to supervise the Alaskan-Canadian highway construction, but turned it down to stay with his children and to keep us in Olean. He was committed to our family and did whatever was necessary to provide for us. One example of his desperation was that he sold his treasured clarinets to Anthony Sinacrapi for cash. Pa could not pay the funeral expenses to Francis Litro until the late 1940s, when he settled the bill by doing some concrete work at the funeral home. In the 1950s, Pa was able to finally afford a gravestone for Mama. Since Pa was working 7 days a week to keep a roof over our heads, it would have been impossible for him to take care of baby Olga. So Grandma and Grandpa Kokeri offered to take care of her. Olga lived with the Kokeri family in Belfast until she went to college. Pa drove us children to Belfast every Sunday to visit baby Olga and Mama's family. Pa helped Grandma and Grandpa Kokeri however he could. Pa built an indoor bathroom in their house on Main Street. However, Grandpa never liked it and preferred to use the outhouse. Keeping the family together, 1939 to 1941. In 1939, Pa got a contract supervising a road building project in Trumansburg near Cayuga Lake. He worked there during the week and returned on the weekends. An Eastern European woman named Jenny cared for the four of us children during the weekdays. We boys rebelled against Pa leaving us with Jenny, and we're ashamed to say we made her life miserable. When summer vacation started, Pa rented a cottage on Cayuga Lake, which was a few miles from his job. The 3-story cottage was near the beach, up against a cliff. The top of the cliff was level with the cottage's 3rd story. There was a food pantry cut into the stone cliff, and of course an outhouse. We enjoyed a happy, play-filled summer in which we got to spend time with Pa every day. After the Trumansburg road building job was completed in 1940, Pa took a job at Clark Brothers, earning $47 a week. He joined as a foreman in the construction crew, often building concrete pads for heavy machinery, which required the precise layout of the anchor bolts and utility studs. Almost immediately after taking the job, Pa and his boss did not get along. Pa was an expert at layout work and quickly became frustrated that his immediate boss did not give him any credit. Unaccustomed to not working for himself and taking orders from others, Pa struggled with not making all the final decisions. The conflict came to a head about a year after he took the job. Pa completed a layout and was ready to pour the concrete, but his boss decided to change the design. Pa protested and tried to show his boss the incorrect calculations, but his boss would not listen. The concrete pad was poured and the machine was set on the pad. The anchor bolts were in the wrong location, so the pad had to be removed with jackhammers and re-poured. Pa considered this mishap the last straw, and he resigned. It was the first and last time Pa ever worked for anyone else. Francis was old enough to realize the impact of Pa's resignation. The job at Clark Brothers had been the first time his father brought home a weekly paycheck, and the loss seemed devastating. During this time, we children worked various jobs after school to help support the family. Francis worked odd jobs, Billy performed piano concerts when possible, Gloria took on the bulk of the housework and cooking to keep the family running smoothly, with young Dickie helping her. Cia and Cio Capito helped us whenever they could, while also raising their own large family. We'd go to Cia's house many mornings before school, and she gave us bread and coffee with lots of milk and sugar. The small breakfast prepared us for the school day and is a source of many happy memories. World War II years, 1942 to 1945. In 1942, we had to leave the little house in the rear lot. Pa could not keep up with the mortgage payments and had to sell it. So we were forced to move back into the fire-damaged house. The house at the time did not have any finished floors, walls, or ceilings. There was no heating system and limited plumbing and electrical. Over time, while we were living there, Pa installed a heating system, a kitchen, bathroom, 3 fireplaces, a roasting oven, a sunroom, and a wine cellar. He plastered the walls and ceilings and tiled the kitchen and bathroom. The heating system was unique in that Pa designed, fabricated, and installed a hot water gravity system. The furnace was built to burn wood and coal, but also included a gas burner. He created each radiator and installed a piping system made up of used oil field pipe. Pa was able to get back the rear house with the help of his friends. Joe Appa helped Pa dig a ditch along the property line between the 2 houses. Pa then told the realtor, Spindler, that he was planning to build a warehouse right up against the property line. Spindler also learned that Pa never put the separate sewer and water lines in the little house. It had all been brought in from the garage and the main house. Next, Pa and Denny Bardenett asked the realtor if he knew of any cheap rental property. Thinking that the rear lot was now undesirable property, the realtor sold the rear lot and house to Denny on the spot for a low price. Denny, in turn, sold it back to Pa. After leaving Clark Brothers, Pa returned to do private contracting work, pouring concrete driveways and sidewalks, as well as laying brickwork. We boys often helped Pa after school, during weekends, and on vacations. In 1942, after the flood, Pa got a contract to repair the damages to the Christopher Columbus Lodge building. The concrete was mixed on the job site in a gas engine-powered mixer. We would load the hopper by shoveling in the sand and gravel and adding the cement. The hopper was then elevated by a clutch to dump the contents into the drum. One time, Francis engaged the clutch too fast, and the hopper started to tip over on him. Pa was fast enough to throw Francis out of the way and roll a barrel under the drum to stop the hopper from tipping further. Pa was able to hire several excellent Italian workers in the area on a part-time basis. They often worked for him after finishing a shift at the plant or on the weekends. Francis, without a driver's license, would pick up the men and bring them to the current job site. Some of them included Pete Lisi, Joe Appa, Joe Macienzi, Dominec Carucci, and Zio Capito. Pa claimed that these men could accomplish more in a few hours than many could in a full day. Without a doubt, Pa was mechanically inclined. He was an excellent craftsman who could repair just about anything, including vehicles. He bought cars from the junkyard for $20 and got them running within a few days. The two cars we remember best were the black Lincoln limousine and the dark green Pontiac. The Lincoln had an intercom system between the front and the back seats with a roll-up window between the front and back. Pa scrapped the car at the start of World War II due to its gas consumption and broken timing chain. During the war, he bought two identical Pontiacs to strip one for parts. He sold the stripped car, which was nothing more than a shell, back to the junkyard for $5. A recurring problem with this car was the fuel line plugging up. Whenever the car stalled, Pa would disconnect the fuel line by the carburetor, suck the line clean, spit out the gas, reconnect the line, and be on his way. One day, when Bill was riding with him, the car stalled on the railroad track. They jumped out of the car and watched the slow-moving train hit the Pontiac at the left front fender and drag it along the railroad tracks for about 100 yards. The next day, Pa went to the junkyard to buy a replacement fender from the car which he had just sold to them for $5 and attached to the car. No one was the wiser since it was the same color. Pa was very accurate with both a rifle and a shotgun. He would shoot at a flock of birds right from the front seat of the car, while behind the steering wheel. He hunted and ate birds, woodchuck, and rabbits, which he spent hours preparing and then served with pasta or polenta, an Italian tradition. One time, a friend brought Pa a woodchuck to cook up. He spent hours preparing and marinating the animal in anticipation of making a nice meal the next day. However, he came home late at night after being out drinking with his buddies and cooked and ate the woodchuck. The following day, when Pa saw the mess in the kitchen, he started giving us hell for having eaten it until he realized what he had done. Pa loved to cook, and cooking became a necessity after Mama died. He didn't have much time during the week to cook, so he often made a large pot of food to feed the family for 2 or 3 days. He also canned meat, mostly beef and pork. This made it easy to heat meat quickly for a stew or another dish. He once bought several chickens to feed the family. With his busy work schedule, however, he did not have time to follow through with plans to slaughter and can the meat. Pa stored the chickens in the cellar, and the family feasted on eggs for several months. We ate eggs in every way possible. Soon the mess was so terrible that they needed to be slaughtered right away, and the 2-inch layer of manure on the basement floor had to be cleaned up. Another time, Pa went through some time-consuming work to remove the bones from a fresh chicken, remold it into its original shape, and then roast it. After many hours preparing this chicken, we sat down and devoured it in about 5 minutes. Similarly, Pa purchased a nanny goat from a farmer who claimed it was pregnant. Pa planned to roast the baby goat for Easter, another Italian tradition. The goat was tied outside the house at 729 North Union Street for many weeks. While it was becoming apparent to Pa that this goat was not pregnant, us children were growing increasingly attached to this pet. One day, Pa gave us money to go to the movies. When we returned, he and Sio had had the goat hung and gutted in the basement. We all cried about losing our pet. And we cried even harder every time Pa fed us one of the 100 quarts of canned goat meat. We remember it being the worst smelling meat we'd ever eaten. Post-war years, 1946 to 1954. During this time, life became a little easier, a little less about surviving and a little more about enjoying life and the family. Bill recalls many parties during these years, many at the Christopher Columbus Lodge. Never one to turn down a competition, Pa frequently played cards at John Salvatore's Speakeasy on North Union Street and bocce at the Lodge. He joined in many eating and drinking contests. Before his sight failed him, Pa was an incredibly good bocce player. He used to play at the Christopher Columbus Lodge, Mario Cristini's house in Bolivar, and Testie's home in Olean, and at Adams Saloon on Main Street. Bocce games were played with gusto. The players always argued over the proximity of the balls and thus the scoring. Pa developed a foolproof measuring device which was never used since, quote, it took the fun out of the game. The players preferred using 2 overlapping sticks on a length of stretchable twine. Winemaking was an annual affair. Pa had all the equipment, barrels, crushers, a grape press, and the bottles. He would buy enough crates of grapes to make 5 barrels of wine each year. Though Pa preferred drinking beer, he still managed to get rid of the wine every year, mostly to house guests. There was always a gallon in the pantry. There's a picture of Pa from 1948. It's a cute one. Looks like in the backyard with his hat on. He's got a big smile on his face. It's sweet. Very, very sweet. There's an article from the Olean Times-Herald dated June 24th, 1949, with the headline, Officers Installed by the Italian Society. W.D. Fote was installed as president of the Christopher Columbus Italian Society at a meeting of the society at the Christopher Columbus Lodge rooms Thursday night. Other officers who were installed will serve with Mr. Fote for the coming year. Theodore Mastrogiacomo, Vice President, Humbert Bardenett, that's his friend, Red Bardenett, Orator, Joseph Orsini, Corresponding Secretary, Tony Mara, Treasurer, Joseph Anastasia, and Joseph Capito, Victor Labella, Peter Lisi, and Camillo Orsini, trustees. Committees for the year were appointed by the new president. And then the committees were listed below. It's very cool. There was always music in Pa's life. Many of our fondest memories are the backyard parties in the summer and the indoor gatherings in the winter with Pa and his musician friends playing and singing. After learning to play the clarinet during the early years in the Olean Italian band, Pa's love for music continued. He played in Burley's band and was a charter member of the Olean Symphony Orchestra. He sang in the choir at St. John's Parish for a while after Mama's death, and even performed solos at special occasions. He eventually quit because he felt the pastor was aloof and unsociable. Pa also purchased and learned to play the mandolin. At one time, he was even tutored in the rudiments of music and harmony, and consequently, he was able to teach us the basics of different instruments that we chose. Later in life, he played the guitar and the violin. Every Christmas Eve, the musicians would go to the homes of their friends and serenade them while standing outside in the cold and snow. Of course, they were always invited into the homes for food and drink and to play any of their requested selections. Because some families would feel offended if they didn't visit their home, they had to make so many stops. This went on till dawn. The younger generation soon wanted to be a part of it, and what started out as a handful of musicians grew into a group of 25 or more playing and singing. It became a tradition, and each Christmas Eve, the whole group would first come to the Fote home for a quick rehearsal, some food and drink, just to get us going. Pa paid for music lessons for Frances, Gloria, and Bill. After spending years of time and resources on Bill's piano career, Bill quit abruptly in 1946. Defeated by our lack of interest in music, Pa never encouraged Dickie to take up music. Ironically, Dickie went on to become a professional and accomplished musician. Pa really enjoyed playing cards, scopa, briscola, and poker. He would play the Italian card games at the lodge, which got very dramatic at times, with the boss and the underboss deciding who gets a drink. In the late 50s, he played poker with our friends and us, although in his late 60s, he sent many of the younger guys home talking to themselves after getting beat on the big pot. They used to call him Mr. Univac because Pa's computer-like brain could tell them after numerous rounds of betting that the pot was short and by how much. A compassionate person, Pa helped friends and relatives any way that he could. While having a drink at the Seventh Heaven, an elderly couple, who were regulars at the bar, told everyone that they were being evicted from their house due to delinquent payments. Pa helped them settle the dispute and later purchased the small, dilapidated home. One winter night, Pa told Gloria that their stove was broken and the couple must be cold, so he took blankets off his own bed and took them to the couple. In 1951, at St. Elia Parish in Delianova, Chiesa di Sant'Elia contacted Pa for financial help to rebuild the devastated church. Pa collected $104.50 from donations that he received from 43 contributors, including his own $25 contribution. He told us that it would pay for over 100 days of labor in Italy, as well as bread for some needy families. Public works projects. In addition to private jobs, Pa started bidding on public works jobs in New York and Pennsylvania with Red Bardinette's financial backing. He received a salary and shared in the profits. In 1947, the city of Olean awarded Pa several contracts for city storm sewer, a sanitary sewer, and an emergency exit for the state armory. Even at 58 years of age, Pa completed the manual labor himself for many of the jobs, outworking everyone else. Pa had a contract for the Red House School in the Allegheny Seneca Indian Reservation. Pa was told that the Indian school was designed to last 10 years. The state planned to turn this region into a reservoir for the Kinzua Dam, being built to address the flooding problem on the Allegheny River. The dam was, in fact, built in 1961, and the Seneca were relocated. Since we boys were in school or in the service during this time, we could only help Pa on weekends or vacations. The city's storm sewer job included a 15-foot deep manhole on Union Street. It was over 6 feet in diameter at the base and tapered up to a standard manhole cover at street level. It required a double layer of bricks and ladder rungs. Pa often did the work on Sundays so he could enlist the help of his Italian friends who worked during the week. He hired 8 men for assistance, 2 mixing mortar, 2 carrying bricks, 2 carrying mortar, and 2 setting scaffolds and mortar. Pa would reach with his left hand for the brick and use his right hand for the trowel and mortar. They would begin at 6 o'clock in the morning and finished in time to wash up before 11 a.m. Mass. Communism threatens Italy. In 1948, several communists threatened to win elections in Italy. Pa asked the Olean Times-Herald to publish a letter written in Italian for all Italian Americans to read and send to their families and friends in Italy. A fervent supporter for democracy and capitalism, Pa's language is fierce and assertive. The text is as follows. Dear relatives and friends, today, due to the importance of the upcoming Italian elections, I feel that it is my duty to write this letter with the hope that it may be of help on the support of Italian liberty, so recently acquired after many tears and so much suffering. I am willing to admit that many of you are justified in rebelling against hunger and misery, but the answer is not Russia, who cannot and would not provide for your needs. To be contrary, America can and wants to continue helping you, not only materially, but also in the preservation of your republic and the personal liberty enjoyed in the United States of America by all of us who were fortunate enough to have emigrated, and by our children. For the present, I can only hope our form of democracy and liberty will also be yours in the future. Remember that a step to the left can only be helpful to a few communist leaders and not to the people. I cannot believe that the people of a land that has been the cradle of world civilization is now willing to subject itself and to become the slave of a vassal of ruthless dictators. For the good of your children, for the good of your church, for the good of Italy and its people, vote against communism. Many of you at one time or another dreamed of coming to America. Today, America is coming to you. Welcome her with open arms. Accept her as a sister for the good of your country and for the peace of the world. That letter was sent to every region of Italy. Pa and Joe Mara collected and translated the responses, and the Olean Times-Herald published many excerpts from the responses on April 17, 1948. During the same era, at the height of the Cold War, Pa wanted to build a nuclear fallout shelter at 729 North Union Street. We still have his design plan, which shows double folding bunk beds, an emergency door to the storage area, and a toilet. We are grateful that this plan never came to fruition. When Pa first arrived in Olean, he injured his right eye with a wood splinter while chopping wood. So for most of his life, Pa only had one good, healthy eye. That never stopped him from being able to lay out the line and grade of a form straighter than others who were using surveying instruments. However, by 1952, Pa's good eye deteriorated, and he had to use his injured eye with a strong corrective lens. His heart also became enlarged, which encroached on his lungs. But Pa's mental capacities never faltered. Unlike many Italian immigrants at that time, Pa was adamant that we receive a college education. He believed that there was nothing more important than education. Although he had had only a few years of grammar school, Pa educated himself through correspondence courses and reading. Pa took classes in management, contracting, construction, and bookkeeping. He kept the ledgers, wrote all the correspondence, and maintained the payroll accounts on all his jobs. Aunt Josephine remembers that when Pa and Mama would visit Belfast, Josephine would give Pa her math problems to do. Pa would figure them out very quickly and give her the answers. Then she just had to figure out how he got the results. Francis worked nights and weekends while he was in grammar school to lessen the financial burden on Pa. When Francis turned 16, he wanted to quit school to work full-time. Pa told him that not only could he not leave school, but he was going to go to college to become a doctor. Pa reminded Francis that both our grandmother and mother died at an early age because of bad doctors. Pa wanted a good doctor in the family. Each of us went on to earn college degrees, and some of us advanced degrees. Francis got a scholarship to St. Bonaventure, where he studied pre-med, and then went to the University of Buffalo Medical School. Pa had to sell the little house on the lot next door to pay for Francis's second year of tuition. After that, Francis worked on an ambulance for room and board for the remainder of medical school. Francis went on to become an obstetrician and gynecologist and a passionate advocate for women's health. When Bill finished high school, he had no intention of going to college. He was content to work for Pa. Pa wouldn't hear it and got Bill a music scholarship at St. Bonaventure. But when he transferred to the University of Notre Dame in 1950 to study engineering, there was no scholarship. It was a tremendous financial burden, and Pa had to make payments throughout the school year. One summer, when Bill explained to Pa that the dormitory and room selection were based on academic standings, Pa said that if he were a student there, he would be living in the president's suite. Bill had a long career with the Veterans Administration Department of Construction. Gloria, Dickie, and Olga worked their way through college. Gloria earned a degree from St. Bonaventure in medical technology and worked in Olean hospitals for many years. Dickie carried out his father's dream of having a musician in the family, graduating from the New York State University College of Fredonia and the Eastman School of Music. He went on to be a professional musician and music professor. Olga earned a bachelor degree in science at St. Bonaventure and the University of Buffalo, becoming a teacher and biologist for New York State. There's a picture of Pa at his 65th birthday party in front of this pizza oven in 1954. There's also a picture of Francis and Billy in the New York Times Herald, published June 2, 1952, brothers to receive degrees. How proud he must have been. There are a couple of pictures of Pa in his garden, dated 1954. The garden looks really wonderful. And there's a picture of Grandma O'Carey in Belfast in front of the house, dated 1954. Family Partnerships, 1954 to 1960. After Bill left the Army in 1954, he and Pa set up a family partnership, the Fote Construction Company. The family threw a large party behind the house to celebrate the new company along with Pa's 65th birthday. Many friends and relatives were invited. Pa celebrated with gusto, cooking, singing, playing the mandolin, eating and drinking. At 65, he still knew how to party. Since Pa was now 65 and receiving Social Security, the company was put in our names, Gloria, William, and Richard. However, Pa was still the boss. At the start of the new company, Pa requested a credit line from the First National Bank, with the only substantial asset being his house. This was the same bank that extended him an almost unlimited line of credit and whose president had been Pa's friend, William Dusenberry, for almost 30 years. Regardless, the bank turned down Pa's initial request. Using Bill's $300 mustering out pay from the Army and $1,200 in savings, Pa's stocking full of coins, and a $1,500 loan from Uncle Ponch, Pa created a financial statement for the bonding company that would dazzle Wall Street. Bill and Pa met with the bonding company in Buffalo. The young officials almost turned the request down until an older official remembered Pa's work during the 1920s. He said that he would underwrite us because he knew Pa would successfully complete any contract. The Fote Construction Company was awarded the bond strictly on Pa's reputation. The Fote Construction Company began bidding jobs and obtained contracts for a window project in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, and a swimming pool and bathhouse at Fancher Pool in Allegheny State Park. During the first day of work at Fancher Pool, Bill picked 3 super athletes from the old neighborhood to help with the demolition work. They later admitted that it was the hardest work they had ever done. Pa and Bill were able to pay back the loan from Uncle Ponch in only 90 days. They were on their way. During this time, Pa's health continued to worsen, but he was still working hard. In 1956, while Bill was working in Saudi Arabia, St. Bonaventure University awarded the Fote Construction Company a contract for a sewage treatment plant. Pa managed all the subcontracted work and paperwork. With the help of Dickie, he completed the job, just like every one of Pa's projects. The contract ended in a lawsuit with one of the subcontractors, which was settled in 1959. Unfortunately, the bonding company became hesitant then to underwrite the Fote Construction Company. We could no longer bid on any public works projects. Bill took a job in Niagara Falls in 1959 working on a massive hydropower plant for the New York Power Authority, which called for concrete pours of thousands of cubic yards every day. The company could not reach this goal, and Bill explained this issue to Pa one weekend. After chatting and drawing out sketches, Pa figured out the cause of the slow concrete pouring, even though he had never visited the site. Bill returned to work on Monday and told the contractor about Pa's solution. The contractor praised Bill, calling him a genius. Whenever there was a newspaper article about one of us or one of his letters to the editor, Pa would have us buy at least 10 copies. He was always proud of our family's accomplishments. Pa had mastered both the Italian and English languages without a formal education. His Italian friends used to come to him to fill out legal documents in Italian because they had complete confidence in him. His English composition was excellent. He wrote great letters, especially to the Olean Times-Herald about current issues. One of his many letters to the editor was a full-length letter to the Olean Times-Herald about higher education. This was dated February 29, 1960, 5 weeks before Pa died. Dear Sir, in this era of scientific wonders, stress is being placed on the necessity for improvement in both quantity and quality of higher education. If we hope to maintain a position of strength as a deterrent to potential greedy enemies who eye our surpluses and envy our standard of living, many other problems must be solved, and soon. Unless the current general thinking is revised, we will lag behind other nations and eventually become easy prey for the more numerous have-nots. We can improve our educational position with no additional taxation if we reduce school building costs and use the savings to raise teachers' salaries to a level that is commensurate with other professions, thus making teaching careers more attractive. The current average pay to educators hardly compares with that of the shop, steel, or auto workers. Teachers' authority over their pupils is at a vanishing point, and the result in many cases is an arrogant attitude toward teachers, particularly by those juveniles who are happy only on Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, and vacation time. No wonder most of the highly competent shun teaching careers and prefer fields where their knowledge is appreciated and adequately compensated. The following may sound pessimistic, but we should realize that the United States of America is the chief target for hate and malicious slander by over 3/4 of the Earth's people, and that the not-too-remote possibility exists that may destroy our way of life and enslave those of us who may be unfortunate enough to survive. Therefore, let us resolve that as long as the so-called Cold War, which in reality is the preparation and the maneuvering for position for a shooting war, continues, we will alter our way of life to meet the emergency. School boards, colleges, and practically all other higher institutions of learning are continuously asking or taxing us for uncounted millions for building purposes, stressing the point that modern buildings are essential in these modern times. But they still teach the 3 R's as they were taught a century ago in one-room little red schoolhouse. We still confuse and bewilder the children with fractions, yards, rods, furlongs, gallons, P's and Q's, when the metric system can be mastered by the average 8-year-old boy or girl in less than 1 week. And we still use a calendar that most of us have to consult every time we wish to accurately determine the date and the day of the week. During the emergency, let us erect the necessary school buildings, but let us concentrate on ample but economical classrooms to train minds, not on palaces with unnecessary costly adjuncts and trimmings that benefit only the 15%ers, promoters, and profiteers whose maxim is, the more we spend, the more we get. Then see that the teachers and educators get their just due. Another point of equal importance is the fact that we are forcing higher education on some youths, regardless of their willingness or capacity to absorb academic knowledge. These young people would be much happier and better off in the long run if given the opportunity to follow their inclinations as businessmen, farmers, mechanics, or common workers. The existing law that prohibits youth from doing useful work by forcing young people against their will should be amended to make it possible for any physically able boy or girl to obtain working papers and get a full-time job after reaching the age of 14 years. Then and only then can the capable and ambitious students be able to fully develop their talent. The teachers will be happy with their profession and pleased with their handiwork, and on top of it all, we would develop some sorely needed muscle for our country. Skilled and experienced mechanics and all sorts of workers are as important and necessary as teachers and scientists in our economy. Let us not repeat the Roman Empire's error. W.D. Fote Sr., 729 North Union Street. The final chapter, 1960. On the first day of April, Pa cleaned off the winter dirt from the sidewalks and was looking forward to spring. He had a couple of drinks at the Seventh Heaven with his friends that evening. He went to bed and never woke up. Pa died on April 2nd, 1960. An old-fashioned Italian wake was held in the house with lots of screaming, crying, eating, and drinking. Pa enjoyed wakes because it allowed him to see out-of-town relatives and friends. We joked that this was the first Italian wake in the Olean area that our father missed. Pa was buried in the St. Bonaventure Cemetery alongside Mama. At that time, the 4 eldest children were married, and Olga was engaged to be married in June. After giving his children everything, their future looked bright, and Pa had no further challenges or battles to fight. Perhaps he figured it was the right time to join his wife. His frankness and superior intelligence, of which he openly admitted, often intimidated others, but he is mostly remembered for his dedication to his family, his strong work ethic, physical strength, sense of humor, and compassion for others. All of us think of him and miss him every day. Pa, rest in peace with Mama. William Dominec Fote, 1889 to 1960. The Olean Times-Herald published his obituary on April 4th, 1960. William D. Fote, Sr., 729 North Union Street, died at his home Saturday, April 2nd, after a short illness. Born in Italy July 11, 1889, he had been a resident of Olean for the past 50 years. Mr. Fote had been in road building and construction until his retirement 5 years ago. Surviving are 3 sons, Dr. Francis Fote of Lackawanna, New York, William D. Fote, Jr., Menlo Park, California, and Richard Fote from Olean. 2 daughters, Mrs. Vincent Oliva in Olean and Miss Olga M. Fote, Olean. 1 sister, Mrs. Dominec Capito of Olean. 2 brothers, Ralph Fote and Joseph Fote, both from Italy, and 5 grandchildren. Mr. Fote was a veteran of World War I, a member of St. John's Church, a charter member and past president of the St. Christopher Columbus Lodge, and a life member of the American Federation of Musicians and American Legion Post of Olean. The body has been taken from the Litro Funeral Home to the late home, 729 North Union Street, where a prayer service will be conducted Tuesday, April 5th, 1960, at 8:30 a.m., followed by a Requiem High Mass at St. John's Church at 9 a.m. Burial will be in St. Bonaventure Cemetery. Postscript. In the summer of 1961, 1 year after Pa's death, the first Capito Fote reunion was held at War Veterans Park in Olean. The descendants of W.D. and Olga Fote and Dominec and Caterina Capito continue to gather on the 3rd Sunday of July every year. Gloria still resides in the family home at 729 North Union Street in Olean. The home is a great source of love, comfort, and memories for members of the Fote and Capito families and for so many friends and neighbors. In the beautiful dining room hangs a grand portrait of our beloved patriarch, William Dominec, the man we all lovingly refer to as Pa.